The thunder rolled across the valley as Willow Fisher clutched her meager belongings to her chest, rain soaking through her tattered dress. She glanced back at Loveland, Colorado, the town that had once been her home, now nothing but a smudge of lamplight in the distance. 3 days had passed since they'd driven her out, since the whispers had turned to shouts, since the kindness of neighbors had transformed into the cruelty of a mob. She stumbled forward, her boots sinking into the mud, knowing that to return meant certain death. The year was 1876, and the West was still wild enough that a woman could disappear into it if she had the courage to face what waited beyond civilization. Willow had that courage now. It was all she had left. The accusations of witchcraft would have been laughable in a different time, but Loveland was a superstitious place, and when 3 children fell ill after eating berries she'd suggested for a cough, the town needed someone to blame. The fact that she lived alone, that she knew herbs and remedies, that her eyes were an unusual shade of green, it was enough to turn them against her. Her foot slipped on the slick earth of the hillside, sending her tumbling down the embankment. Pain shot through her ankle as she landed at the bottom, and Willow bit back a cry. She couldn't afford to be found, not now. The rain continued to fall, washing away any tracks she might leave behind. Small mercies, she thought bitterly. The night grew colder, and with her dress soaked through, Willow knew she needed shelter. In the distance, she spotted a flicker of light. A cabin, perhaps, or a farmhouse. She hesitated. Approaching strangers was dangerous, but freezing to death was certain. Gathering her strength, she limped toward the light, each step sending fresh pain through her injured ankle. As she drew closer, the shape of a small ranch came into view. A modest cabin stood at its center, lamplight glowing warmly from the windows. A stable sat off to one side, and the soft nickering of horses reached her ears even through the rain. She paused at the edge of the property, doubt creeping in. What if whoever lived here had already heard about her from Loveland? What if they turned her away, or worse, turned her in? Before she could decide, the cabin door swung open and a tall figure stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. "Who's out there?" called a deep voice. "I can see you standing there. Step into the light or I'll assume you're trouble." Willow hesitated, then limped forward, stopping at the edge of the pool of light cast by the lantern hanging from the porch. "I mean no harm," she said, her voice hoarse from disuse. "I'm just looking for shelter from the storm." The man lowered his rifle slightly, studying her. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His face was weathered by sun and wind, but his eyes were kind despite their wariness. Willow guessed him to be about 30, though life in the West aged a person quickly. "You're soaked through," he observed. "And hurt by the looks of it," Willow nodded, too exhausted to deny it. "I twisted my ankle on the hill. I can move on if you'd prefer. I don't want to cause any trouble." The man was silent for a long moment, then stepped aside, gesturing to the open door behind him. "Come in." No one should be out in this weather. Relief flooded through her, but caution held her back. "Are you sure? You don't know anything about me?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I know you're wet, injured, and in need of help. That's enough for tonight. The rest can wait until morning." "Thank you," Willow whispered, limping toward the porch. As she reached the steps, her ankle gave way entirely. She would have fallen if the man hadn't moved with surprising speed, catching her before she hit the ground. "Easy now," he said, his arms strong around her waist. "Let me help you." Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable. A fire burned in the stone hearth, casting a warm glow over the wooden furniture. A table and chairs stood in one corner, a bed in another, and a small kitchen area occupied the far wall. It was a bachelor's home, sparse but tidy. The man helped her to a chair by the fire. "My name's Preston Edwards," he said, setting his rifle against the wall. "Most folks just call me Prees." "I'm Willow," she replied, deliberately leaving off her surname. The less he knew about her, the safer they both were. Preston nodded, not pressing for more information. "You need dry clothes and something warm to drink. Then we'll see to that ankle." He disappeared behind a partition and returned with a flannel shirt and a pair of trousers that would be far too big for her but were dry. "They're mine, so they'll swallow you whole, but they're clean. You can change behind there," he said, nodding to the partition. I'll make some coffee. Willow hobbled behind the screen and peeled off her sodden dress. The shirt hung to her knees, and she had to roll the trousers up several times, securing them with a piece of rope he'd provided. When she emerged, Preston was pouring coffee into 2 tin mugs. "Sit," he instructed, nodding to the chair by the fire. When she complied, he knelt before her, gently taking her injured foot in his hands. His touch was surprisingly gentle for such large hands. "This is swollen pretty bad. Nothing broken, I don't think, but you won't be walking far for a day or two." Willow tensed. "I can't stay." "I need to keep moving." Preston looked up at her, his blue eyes searching her face. Running from something or someone, she looked away. "It's better if you don't know," he nodded slowly. "Fair enough, but you can't go anywhere tonight, not in this weather and not with that ankle. Stay until morning at least, then if you still want to leave, I won't stop you." Willow knew he was right. She couldn't travel in her condition, especially not in the dark and the rain. One night, she could give herself one night of safety. "Thank you," she said quietly. Preston wrapped her ankle with a strip of clean cloth, his movements efficient but gentle. When he finished, he handed her a mug of coffee. "Drink this, it'll warm you up." The coffee was strong and hot, exactly what she needed. As she sipped it, Preston busied himself preparing a simple meal of beans and cornbread. The domesticity of the scene made her chest ache with longing for the life she'd lost. "Have you lived here long?" she asked, trying to distract herself from those thoughts. Preston nodded, stirring the beans. 5 years, came out from Missouri after the war, wanted somewhere quiet where a man could build something of his own. And have you built something, I mean?" A faint smile crossed his face. "Getting there, got 30 head of cattle, 6 good horses, and land enough to expand when I'm ready." "It's not much yet, but it's mine." "It's impressive," Willow said honestly, "to build all this alone." "Had to be alone," he said simply. "After what I saw during the war, I needed the quiet." He glanced at her. "But I'm guessing you understand something about needing to be alone." Willow looked down at her coffee. "Yes, I do." They ate in comfortable silence, the rain drumming on the roof above them. When they finished, Preston insisted she take the bed while he slept on a pallet by the fire. Too exhausted to argue, Willow accepted, sinking into the first real bed she'd seen in days. Despite her fear and uncertainty about what tomorrow would bring, she fell asleep almost instantly to the sound of the rain and the crackling fire. She woke to sunlight streaming through the cabin windows. For a moment, disorientation gripped her until the events of the previous night came flooding back. Sitting up, she saw Preston by the stove, cooking something that smelled wonderfully like bacon. "Morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "How's the ankle?" Willow gingerly tested it, wincing slightly. "Better than last night, but still sore," he nodded. "Figured as much. You're welcome to stay another day if you need to." She hesitated. Every instinct told her to keep moving, to put as much distance between herself and Loveland as possible. But where would she go with an injured ankle? How far could she get before exhaustion or hunger or fear caught up with her? "I don't want to impose," she said finally. "It's no imposition," Preston replied, sliding bacon onto 2 plates. "Truth be told, it's nice having company. Gets lonely out here sometimes." After breakfast, Preston went out to tend his animals, leaving Willow alone in the cabin. She took the opportunity to properly look around. The cabin was simple but well built, with tight seams against the weather and sturdy furniture that looked handmade. A small bookshelf held a surprising number of volumes history, some poetry, practical guides to ranching and animal husbandry. Not the library of the uneducated man she might have expected in a remote ranch. On the mantel sat a single photograph in a wooden frame, a younger Preston in a Union uniform, standing beside another man with the same blue eyes. A brother, perhaps. There were no other personal items, no signs of family or a woman's touch. When Preston returned, he found her standing by the fireplace, studying the photograph. "My brother, Paul," he said, startling her. "He didn't make it back from Gettysburg." "I'm sorry," Willow said softly. Preston shrugged, but she could see the old pain in his eyes. "It was a long time ago now. We were both idealists, thought we were fighting for something important. Turned out war isn't as glorious as the recruiters make it sound." He changed the subject abruptly. Your ankle seems better, you're up and about. Yes, though I don't think I could walk far yet, he nodded. No need to rush off. Like I said, you're welcome to stay as long as you need. Willow studied him, trying to understand his kindness. Why are you helping me? You don't know anything about me. I could be dangerous, a criminal. Preston laughed, a warm, genuine sound that transformed his serious face. Are you dangerous, I mean? No, but then there's no problem. Besides, I like to think I'm a decent judge of character. You're running from something, that's clear enough. But I don't think you're the kind who brings trouble to others without cause. His assessment was too close to the truth for comfort. Willow looked away. You'd be surprised how trouble can find a person whether they've earned it or not. That I believe, Preston said quietly. World's not always fair, especially out here where law and justice can be two very different things. He picked up his hat from the table. I need to check the north pasture fence. A few posts were leaning last time I rode by. Will you be all right here for a few hours? Willow nodded. Of course. Is there anything I can do while you're gone, to earn my keep? He seemed about to refuse, then reconsidered. There's stew fixings on the shelf if you feel up to it. Been a while since I had a proper cooked meal that wasn't beans or bacon. After he left, Willow set about preparing a stew with the dried beef, potatoes, and carrots she found in his pantry. The simple domesticity of cooking soothed her frayed nerves. For a little while, she could pretend she was just a woman making dinner, not a fugitive hiding from a town that wanted her gone or worse. By the time Preston returned, the stew was simmering nicely, filling the cabin with savory aromas. He paused in the doorway, an unreadable expression on his face. Something wrong? Willow asked, suddenly anxious. He shook his head. No, it smells like home in here. Real home, I mean, not just a place to sleep. He removed his hat, hanging it on a peg by the door. Thank you. They ate together as the sun set, talking of inconsequential things: the weather, the condition of the pastures, the temperament of his horses. Willow found herself relaxing in his presence, drawn to his quiet strength and undemanding kindness. It had been so long since she'd had a simple conversation with someone who wasn't looking at her with suspicion. As darkness fell, Preston lit the lamps and stoked the fire. I need to ride into town tomorrow, he said casually. Running low on supplies. Is there anything you need while I'm there? Willow froze, her cup halfway to her lips. Town, she repeated, trying to keep her voice steady. Which town? Silver Creek, he replied, watching her carefully. It's about 10 miles east of here, not Loveland, he added, his eyes never leaving her face. The mention of Loveland confirmed her worst fears. He knew, or at least suspected, where she had come from. How did you? I didn't, he said quietly. Not until just now, but I've heard rumors from Silver Creek about a woman run out of Loveland on accusations of witchcraft. They say she poisoned children. Willow's hands trembled so badly she had to set down her cup. And you believe that? I believe folks are quick to blame what they don't understand, Preston said carefully. Especially when they're scared. Those children didn't die, by the way. They recovered after a few days, but the rumor mill doesn't usually include that part of the story. Relief washed over her at the news. They're alive, you're certain? Preston nodded. Trader who came through Silver Creek yesterday said so, but Loveland's still in an uproar, apparently. They've got men out looking for you. Cold fear replaced her momentary relief. I should go. If they find me here, they won't find you here, Preston interrupted firmly. My property doesn't lie on any of the main trails, and I don't have much to do with Loveland folk anyway. Why would you risk it? Willow asked, genuinely bewildered. Harboring someone like me? Preston was quiet for a long moment. Because I know what it's like to be judged for something that isn't your fault, he finally said. After the war, I came back changed. Some folks couldn't understand why I didn't want to talk about it, why I flinched at loud noises, why I sometimes woke up shouting in the night. They called me weak, called me crazy, said I was dangerous. That's why I came out here, to get away from the judgment. He met her eyes. So when I say you'll always have a place with me, I mean it. Willow stared at him, his words, you'll always have a place with me, echoing in her mind. Such a simple phrase, and yet it contained everything she had lost: safety, acceptance, belonging. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. Preston nodded, seemingly embarrassed by his own openness. "Get some rest. Your ankle needs time to heal properly." That night, lying in Preston's bed while he again slept by the fire, Willow allowed herself to consider for the first time that she might have found a safe haven. Not forever, perhaps she wasn't naive enough to believe the world would let her be so easily, but for now, in this moment, she was safe. The realization brought tears to her eyes, tears she had been too frightened and too determined to shed during her desperate flight from Loveland. The next morning, Preston prepared to ride to Silver Creek. "I should be back by sundown," he told her. "Bar the door while I'm gone, just to be safe. There's a rifle above the mantel if you need it." "I've never fired a gun," Willow admitted. "Let's hope you don't need to start today," he replied with a faint smile. "Is there anything specific you need from town? Proper clothes, maybe?" Willow looked down at the oversized shirt and trousers she was still wearing. "I don't have money to pay you back. Consider it an advance on future stews," Preston said lightly. "Just tell me your size and any preferences." After Preston left, Willow spent the day keeping busy to ward off anxiety. She swept the cabin, organized the pantry shelves, and even attempted to mend a tear in one of Preston's shirts she found in a basket by the fireplace. The simple domesticity of these tasks soothed her, reminding her of her life before the accusations, when she had been respected in Loveland for her knowledge of herbs and healing. As the afternoon wore on, she found herself watching the window more and more frequently, waiting for Preston's return. It surprised her, this concern for a man who had been a stranger just 2 days ago. But there was something about his quiet strength, his unquestioning kindness, that had wormed its way past her defenses. The sun was beginning to set when she finally heard hoofbeats approaching. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by tension as she realized it sounded like more than one horse. Moving as quietly as her still tender ankle would allow, she went to the window and peered out. Preston was riding toward the cabin, leading a second horse, a gentle-looking mare with a white blaze on her forehead. There was no one else with him. Willow's shoulders sagged with relief as she unbarred the door to meet him. "You're back," she said, unable to keep the relief from her voice. Preston dismounted, tying both horses to the hitching post. "Did you think I wouldn't be?" "No, She hesitated, not wanting to admit her fear. "I heard 2 horses and worried it might be trouble," understanding dawned in his eyes. "Ah, no, this is Daisy, she's for you." At Willow's startled look, he added, "Not as a gift, just on loan. If you're going to stay here a while, you'll need a way to get around once that ankle's healed. Can't expect you to walk everywhere." "I don't know what to say," Willow said, moving forward to stroke the mare's velvety nose. "She's beautiful. She's gentle, too, good for someone who hasn't ridden much." Preston began unloading packages from his saddlebags. "Got you some clothes, too. Had to guess at the size, but the shopkeeper's wife helped." Inside, Willow unpacked the parcels to find 2 simple but well-made dresses, undergarments, stockings, and a pair of sturdy boots that looked close to her size. There was also a warm shawl, a hairbrush, and some simple toiletries. "This is too much," she protested, looking up at Preston. He shook his head. "It's what anyone would need, nothing fancy." "Still, I need to pay you back somehow. You already are," he said simply. "Having someone to talk to share meals with, that's worth more than you might think out here." As the days passed, Willow's ankle healed and she settled into life at the ranch. Preston taught her to ride Daisy, showing surprising patience when she was nervous. They fell into a comfortable routine. He handled the ranch work while she took over the cooking and household tasks. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, sometimes reading, sometimes talking, sometimes simply enjoying the comfortable silence between them. A week turned into 2, and Willow found herself thinking less about running and more about staying. There was something about this place, about Preston himself, that felt like the home she'd never truly had. Born to a mother who died young and a father who drowned his grief in whiskey, Willow had learned early to fend for herself. Her knowledge of herbs and healing had come from an old woman on the outskirts of another town, long before Loveland. That woman had been called a witch too, though never to her face. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Preston finally asked the question Willow had been dreading. What happened in Loveland? The real story, I mean. She tensed, but found she wanted him to know the truth. I lived there for 3 years. Kept to myself mostly, but I helped people when they needed it, setting bones, delivering babies, mixing remedies for common ailments. The town didn't have a proper doctor, so they tolerated me, even if they found me. Unusual. Unusual how? Willow smiled faintly. I live alone, I speak my mind, I know things most women aren't supposed to know about medicine and the human body. And then there's these, she added, gesturing to her eyes, their unusual green standing out even in the fading light. Preston studied them. They're remarkable, like spring leaves. The simple compliment flustered her. Anyway, there was a family, the Millers. Their children got into some berries in the woods. I'd warned the parents about them before they can cause stomach upset if eaten in quantity, but they're not deadly. The children were sick for days. High fevers, vomiting. I did what I could for them, but people were scared and they needed someone to blame. Preston finished for her. Willow nodded. It started with whispers. Then someone remembered I'd given Mrs. Miller a tea for her cough the week before, and suddenly it was my fault the children were sick. They said I'd cursed them, poisoned them. It didn't matter that I'd delivered 2 of those children, or that I'd never harmed anyone. Once the fear started, it spread like wildfire. So they ran you out. They came to my cabin at dusk, Willow said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. 20 men with torches and rifles, said if I wasn't gone by morning, they'd burn me out or worse. I didn't wait to find out if they meant it. I took what I could carry and left that night. Preston's face had hardened as she spoke. Cowards, he said quietly, threatening a woman alone. Fear makes people cruel, Willow said. I've seen it before. She hesitated, then added, I'm telling you this because you deserve to know what kind of trouble I might bring to your door. If anyone from Loveland discovers I'm here, let them come, Preston interrupted, his voice calm but firm. This is my land. I decide who stays and who goes. Willow studied his profile in the fading light. Why are you really helping me, Preston? The truth. He was silent for a long moment, gazing out at the darkening land. Because from the moment I saw you standing in the rain, something in me recognized something in you. He turned to face her. Loneliness calls to loneliness, I suppose, and maybe I was tired of being alone. The honesty in his answer took her breath away. Before she could respond, he stood abruptly. It's getting cold. We should head in. That night, Willow lay awake long after Preston's breathing had deepened into sleep. His words echoed in her mind. Loneliness calls to loneliness. Was that all this was? 2 solitary souls finding temporary comfort in each other's company? Or was it something more, something growing between them that she was afraid to name? The next day brought unexpected visitors. Willow was hanging laundry behind the cabin when she heard horses approaching from the east. Instinctively, she ducked behind the sheets, peering through the gap to see 3 men riding toward the cabin. Her heart hammered against her ribs when she recognized one of them, Bill Harper, the blacksmith from Loveland. Preston was in the corral, working with one of the younger horses. He glanced up as the riders approached, then casually draped the lead rope over the fence and walked to meet them, positioning himself between the riders and the cabin. Willow couldn't hear their conversation from where she was hiding, but she could see the tension in Preston's shoulders, the careful way he kept his hands visible but ready. After what felt like an eternity, the men rode away, heading north rather than back toward Loveland. As soon as they were out of sight, Willow rushed to Preston, fear making her reckless. Who were they? What did they want? Preston's face was grim. Looking for you, though they didn't say so directly, said they were tracking a dangerous woman who'd fled Loveland after harming some children. Asked if I'd seen anyone unusual passing through. Willow's blood ran cold. Did they believe you when you said no? I don't think so. The blacksmith Harper, he called himself, kept looking past me toward the cabin. I think they'll be back with more men next time. I have to leave, Willow said immediately. Tonight, I won't put you in danger. Preston shook his head firmly. No, running now is exactly what they'd expect, and with 3 of them out there, they'd likely spot you before you got 5 miles. He thought for a moment. There's a line cabin up in the hills, about 3 hours' ride from here. It's rough but solid. We could go there for a while, let things cool down. Willow repeated. Preston, this is my problem, not yours. It became my problem when I told you you'd always have a place with me, he said simply. I don't make promises lightly, Willow. There it was again, that phrase that had lodged itself in her heart the first time he'd said it. You'll always have a place with me. Such a simple sentence, but it contained multitudes: safety, acceptance, belonging, things she'd never truly had before. All right, she agreed softly. When do we leave? Now. They'll expect us to wait until dark if we're running. We'll take the western trail, then cut north through the ravine. It's a harder route, but less visible. They worked quickly, gathering only what they would need: food, blankets, ammunition for Preston's rifle, and a small medical kit Willow had assembled from local plants. Within an hour, they were mounted and riding west, away from the main trails that connected the scattered ranches and homesteads of the area. The line cabin was more primitive than Preston had described: a single room with a dirt floor, a small stone fireplace, and shuttered windows with no glass. But it was solid, as he'd promised, with thick walls of stacked logs and a roof that didn't leak despite its age. It's not much, Preston said apologetically as they unpacked the horses, but it's hidden well. Unless someone knows exactly where to look, they won't find it. It's perfect, Willow assured him, already gathering kindling for a fire. The autumn days were still warm, but the nights in the Colorado hills could be bitterly cold. As darkness fell, they sat before the small fire, sharing a simple meal of jerky and hardtack. The single room felt intimate in a way the cabin hadn't, their bedrolls laid out on opposite sides of the hearth, close enough that Willow could hear every shift of Preston's body, every quiet breath. How long will we stay? She asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Preston poked at the fire, sending sparks dancing up the chimney. A week, maybe 2, long enough for them to give up searching this area and move on. They're not lawmen, they can't spend forever hunting you. Willow nodded, staring into the flames. And then what? I keep running, always looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next town to drive me out. Is that what you want? Of course not, she said quietly. But I don't see another choice. Preston was silent for so long that Willow thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but determined. Stay with me. Willow looked up, startled. What? Stay with me, he repeated. Not just until it's safe, but after, always. He met her eyes across the fire. I know it hasn't been long, and maybe this is foolish, but I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. Willow's heart hammered in her chest. Preston, you can't mean— I do, he interrupted. I've lived alone a long time, Willow, long enough to know when something matters. When someone matters. He moved around the fire to kneel before her, taking her hands in his. I'm not asking for promises now, just think about it, please. Willow stared at their joined hands, his so much larger than hers, strong and calloused from years of ranch work. Hands that had been nothing but gentle with her from the moment they'd met. I will, she whispered. I promise. The days at the line cabin fell into their own rhythm, different from life at the ranch, but no less comfortable. They took turns hunting and gathering, Willow showing Preston which plants were edible or medicinal, Preston teaching her to set snares for rabbits. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, talking more openly than they ever had before. Preston told her about his childhood in Missouri, about following his brother into the war despite their parents' objections, about holding Paul as he died on a field in Pennsylvania. Willow shared stories of her own, her difficult childhood, her apprenticeship with the old healer woman, her years of wandering before settling in Loveland. I've never told anyone all of this, she admitted one night, a week into their stay. Preston smiled, the firelight casting warm shadows across his face. Neither have I. On the 9th day, disaster struck. They were returning from checking snares when the sound of horses reached them. Preston immediately pulled Willow into the cover of the trees, signaling for silence. Through the branches, they could see 5 riders approaching the cabin, Bill Harper among them. How did they find us? Willow whispered, her heart pounding. Must have followed our trail from the ranch, Preston replied grimly. I didn't think they'd be persistent enough to track us all the way up here." They watched as the men dismounted, weapons drawn. Harper kicked open the cabin door and the others followed him inside. A moment later they emerged, frustration evident in their postures. "Spread out," Harper ordered. "They can't have gone far. The ashes in the fireplace are still warm." The men split up, two heading east, two west, and Harper remaining by the cabin. Preston pulled Willow deeper into the trees. "We need to circle around to the horses," he whispered. "They're hidden in the ravine, remember? If we can reach them without being seen, we can ride north over the ridge. There's a trading post about 20 miles that way. The owner's an old friend, he'll help us." They moved as silently as possible through the underbrush, keeping low and pausing frequently to listen. They had almost reached the ravine when a shout went up behind them. "There they are." Willow turned to see one of Harper's men pointing in their direction, already raising his rifle. Preston shoved her forward. "Run, get to the horses." She stumbled down the slope toward the ravine, Preston close behind her. A shot cracked through the air, splintering bark from a tree near her head. Another followed, and Preston grunted in pain. "Preston," Willow cried, turning back. "Keep going," he ordered through gritted teeth, clutching his left arm where blood was already soaking through his shirt. "I'm right behind you." They reached the horses, and Preston helped Willow mount despite his injury. As he turned to his own horse, another shot rang out and his mount reared in panic, pulling free of its tether and bolting up the ravine. "Go," Preston shouted, slapping Daisy's flank. "I'll find another way." "I won't leave you," Willow protested. "You have to, they want you, not me." "I'll hold them off, meet you at the trading post." "Now go," tears blurring her vision, Willow urged Daisy up the steep path out of the ravine. Behind her, she heard more shots, then Preston's voice calling out to their pursuers, drawing them away from her trail. Willow rode hard, following Preston's directions north over the ridge. Night fell, but she pressed on, guided by the stars as Preston had taught her. By dawn, she was exhausted, and Daisy was lathered with sweat. She allowed the mare to rest beside a small stream, her mind racing with worry for Preston. He was injured, outnumbered, and on foot in rough country. The rational part of her knew his chances were poor, but she wouldn't believe he was gone. Not Preston, who had offered her safety when no one else would, who had looked at her strange eyes and her solitary ways and seen something worth protecting, worth loving. Because that's what this was, she realized with sudden clarity. Love. Not just gratitude or dependency or the natural attraction between two lonely people. Something deeper, stronger, a recognition of kindred spirits, of souls that had perhaps been searching for each other all along. "I have to go back," she whispered to Daisy, stroking the mare's neck. "I have to find him." But that would be foolish, she knew. If Harper and his men had captured Preston, returning would only ensure they caught her too. And if Preston had escaped, he would be heading for the trading post as planned. Her best hope, their best hope, was to continue north and pray that he would find his way to her. After allowing Daisy a few more minutes to rest, Willow mounted again and continued north. By midday, she spotted smoke rising above the trees. The trading post, it had to be. She approached cautiously, scanning for any sign of Harper and his men. The trading post was a sturdy log building with a wide porch and a corral for horses. An older man with a gray beard was stacking firewood beside the door. He looked up as Willow approached, his expression wary until he saw it was a woman riding alone. "Help you, miss," he called. Willow dismounted, her legs shaky after so many hours in the saddle. "Are you Samuel?" she asked, remembering the name Preston had mentioned. The man's eyebrows rose. "I am. Who's asking?" "My name is Willow. Preston Edwards sent me. He said you would help us." Recognition flashed across Samuel's weathered face. "Preston, where is he?" Willow's composure finally cracked. "I don't know," she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "We were attacked. He was shot. He told me to come here, said he would meet me, but—" "Whoa, easy there," Samuel said, moving forward to steady her as she swayed on her feet. "Come inside. You look dead on your feet, and this sounds like a story best told sitting down." Inside, the trading post was warm and smelled of tobacco and coffee. Samuel sat her at a small table and brought her a mug of strong coffee laced with something stronger, Drink, he instructed. Then tell me everything. Willow did, starting with her banishment from Loveland and ending with the attack at the Line cabin. Samuel listened without interruption, his expression growing grimmer with each detail. "These men," he said when she'd finished, "they're not lawmen, no badges, no warrants." Willow shook her head. "Just townspeople, vigilantes, I suppose," Samuel nodded thoughtfully. "Then they've got no authority to be hunting you across county lines, and attacking an innocent man on his own property, that's a crime in itself." He stood. "I need to send some messages. The nearest actual lawman is in Silver Creek. Sheriff Owen's a good man, takes his job seriously. He won't stand for this kind of frontier justice in his territory." Hope flared in Willow's chest. "You think he'll help?" "I know he will," Samuel assured her. "You rest now. I've got a room in the back you can use. I'll wake you if there's any news." Exhaustion finally caught up with her, and Willow slept deeply despite her worry. When she woke, night had fallen again, and for a moment she was disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then memory rushed back Preston, the attack, her desperate ride north. She rose and made her way back to the main room of the trading post. Samuel was behind the counter, talking quietly with a tall man wearing a silver star on his vest. They both looked up as she entered. "Miss Fisher," the lawman said, nodding politely, "I'm Sheriff Owen. Samuel here has told me about your situation." Willow tensed. "He told you everything?" The sheriff's expression was unreadable. "Enough to know that Bill Harper and his friends have no business hunting you across my county. Whatever happened in Loveland, and I've heard some mighty peculiar stories, it's not my jurisdiction. What is my concern is armed men threatening folks on their own property." Relief washed through her. "Have you found Preston? Is he alive?" "We don't know yet," Sheriff Owen admitted. "I've got men out searching, and I sent a telegram to the county seat asking for more deputies. If he's out there, we'll find him." Willow sank into a chair, the brief flare of hope dimming. "It's been nearly 2 days, if he's injured." "Preston Edwards is one of the toughest men I know," Samuel interjected. "If anyone could survive out there, it's him." The sheriff nodded agreement. "Samuel's right, and we've got another advantage. It rained last night. Hard. If Harper and his men were still in the hills, they'd have headed for shelter. Makes them easier to find." "And what happens when you do find them?" Willow asked. "They'll face charges," the sheriff said firmly. "Trespassing, assault with a deadly weapon, possibly attempted murder if—" He cleared his throat. "Well, we'll see. For now, you're safe here. I've deputized Samuel, so this place is officially under the protection of the law." Despite the sheriff's reassurances, Willow barely slept that night. She kept imagining Preston alone in the wilderness, injured, possibly dying. By morning, her resolve had hardened. She couldn't sit and wait any longer. "I'm going to look for him," she announced to Samuel as he prepared breakfast. The older man looked up from the stove, his expression concerned. The sheriff said to stay put. "And I respect that, but I can't just wait here doing nothing. I know those hills now. I know where we were attacked, where Preston might have gone, and I know plants that can help if he's injured." Samuel studied her for a long moment. "You care about him a great deal." "I love him," Willow said simply, the first time she'd spoken the words aloud. "And if there's any chance he's alive out there, I need to try." Samuel sighed heavily. "Preston would have my hide if I let you go alone." He hesitated, then nodded decisively. "I'll go with you. My son can watch the trading post. He's not as good a shot as I am anyway." They set out an hour later, Samuel leaving a note for the sheriff explaining their plan. The older man knew the area even better than Preston did, leading them along game trails and old logging roads that cut hours off their journey back to the Line cabin. As they neared the area where she and Preston had been attacked, Willow's anxiety grew. The wilderness seemed vast and impenetrable, the perfect place for a wounded man to disappear without a trace. Where would he go? She asked Samuel, scanning the rugged landscape. If he was injured but able to move, Samuel considered the question carefully. There's an old trapper's cabin about 3 miles northwest of here. Most folks don't know about it, it's well hidden, but Preston and I hunted this area last winter. He knows where it is. They changed direction, heading northwest through increasingly difficult terrain. The sun was high overhead when Samuel suddenly raised his hand, signaling for silence. Willow reined in Daisy, listening intently. At first she heard nothing but the wind in the pines and the distant cry of a hawk, then so faint she might have imagined it a voice. "That way," Samuel whispered, pointing toward a dense stand of trees that concealed a small valley. They approached cautiously, weapons ready in case it was Harper or his men. As they drew closer, the voice became clearer, someone singing, the melody rough but recognizable. A Union marching song. "Preston," Willow breathed, urging Daisy forward. They emerged into a small clearing where a tiny, dilapidated cabin stood. Seated on a log outside, rifle across his knees and left arm bound in a makeshift sling, was Preston. He looked up as they approached, his face breaking into a smile of such pure joy that it made Willow's heart skip. "Took you long enough," he called, his voice hoarse but strong. Willow was off her horse before Daisy had fully stopped, running across the clearing. Preston stood to meet her, his good arm opening to catch her as she flung herself against his chest. "You're alive," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I'd lost you." "Not a chance," Preston murmured against her hair. "I promised to meet you at the trading post, didn't I?" "You were shot. I saw the blood, grazed my arm," he said, gesturing to the sling. "Hurts like blazes, but it's not serious. I was more worried about you. Did you make it to Samuel's all right?" Willow nodded, pulling back to examine his injury. "I did." "The sheriff is looking for you and for Harper and his men." "No need to look for Harper," Preston said grimly. "He and his friends ran into a real lawman yesterday, Sheriff Owen himself, with half a dozen deputies. I watched from the trees as they were arrested and taken away. You saw this?" Samuel asked, dismounting to join them. Preston nodded. "I was making my way toward the trading post, slow going with this arm, heard them before I saw them, Harper complaining loud enough to wake the dead. Then the sheriff and his men surrounded them. It was quite a sight." "Why didn't you make yourself known?" Willow asked. "You could have gone with them, received proper medical attention." Preston's eyes softened as he looked at her. "I didn't know if you'd made it safely to Samuel's." "I wasn't going to risk leading anyone to you, not until I knew for certain you were safe." "You stubborn fool," Willow said, her voice breaking with emotion. "You could have died out here." "I'm harder to kill than that," Preston replied with a small smile. "Besides, I had something important to live for." The journey back to the trading post was slow but uneventful. Preston rode behind Samuel, his injured arm making it difficult for him to manage a horse alone. Willow kept close to his side, still half afraid he might disappear if she looked away. At the trading post, they found Sheriff Owen waiting for them, his expression shifting from concern to relief at the sight of Preston alive and relatively well. "Edwards," he greeted. "Glad to see you in one piece, more or less." Preston dismounted carefully, wincing as the movement jarred his injured arm. "Sheriff, hear you rounded up Harper and his friends." "That we did. They're cooling their heels in Silver Creek's jail, waiting for the circuit judge." The sheriff's expression hardened. "They'll face serious charges. Assault, trespassing, possibly attempted murder. The judge doesn't look kindly on vigilante justice." "And the accusations against me?" Willow asked quietly. "From Loveland," Sheriff Owen shook his head. "As I told you before, that's not my jurisdiction. But I did send a telegram to the county sheriff over there, asking some pointed questions about why a group of armed men were allowed to drive a woman from her home without due process." He smiled faintly. "Turns out there was never any official complaint filed against you, Miss Fisher. Just rumors and fear. So, I'm not wanted for anything?" Willow asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Not by any legal authority," the sheriff confirmed. "You're free to go where you please, though I'd suggest staying out of Loveland for a while, at least until tempers cool." Relief washed through her, so powerful that her knees nearly buckled. Preston must have sensed it because his good arm came around her waist, steady and supporting as always. "Thank you, Sheriff," he said. "For everything?" Sheriff Owen nodded. "Just doing my job." "You should have that arm looked at properly. Doc Wilson's in Silver Creek if you want to ride back with me." Preston glanced at Willow, a question in his eyes. She nodded, understanding without words that they would go together, wherever that might be. "We'll do that," Preston told the sheriff. After we've had a night's rest. That evening, after Preston's wound had been properly cleaned and bandaged by Samuel, who had some medical experience from his army days, they sat together on the trading post's porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. What happens now? Willow asked softly. Preston was silent for a moment. That depends on you, he finally said. The sheriff says you're free to go anywhere. You could start fresh somewhere new, somewhere no one knows you or the stories from Loveland. Willow studied his profile in the fading light. Is that what you think I should do? No, he said simply. I think you should come home with me to stay. He turned to face her fully. I meant what I said at the Line cabin, Willow. I want you to stay with me, not just for now, but always. Willow's heart raced. Are you asking me to marry you, Preston Edwards? I am, he said, taking her hand. I love you, Willow Fisher. I think I started falling in love with you that first night when you stood in the rain looking at me with those remarkable eyes, too proud to beg for help but too desperate to turn away. He squeezed her hand. I don't have much to offer, just a small ranch, a simple life, but everything I have is yours if you want it. Willow felt tears well in her eyes, but for once they were tears of joy, not fear or sorrow. I love you too, she whispered. And yes, I want to come home with you. I want to stay always. Preston's smile was like the sunrise, breaking warm and bright across his face. He leaned forward to kiss her, his lips gentle against hers, a promise of the life they would build together. 3 weeks later, they stood before a minister in Silver Creek, speaking vows that felt like a formality they had already promised themselves to each other in all the ways that truly mattered. Samuel stood as witness, his weathered face creased in a broad smile. Sheriff Owen was there too, along with a few of Preston's neighbors, who had been surprised but supportive when he returned home with a bride-to-be. News travels fast in small communities, and by the time they returned to Preston's ranch, their ranch now word had spread about the woman from Loveland who had been unjustly accused, and the rancher who had stood by her against armed men. The story had grown in the telling, as stories do, until Preston was practically a hero from a dime novel, and Willow a persecuted innocent. The truth, as always, was more complex, but the result was that when neighbors came to call, it was with curiosity rather than suspicion. Willow's knowledge of herbal remedies, once viewed with superstition, was now sought after, especially after she successfully treated the Peterson baby's croup and old Mr. Henderson's arthritis. You're becoming popular, Preston observed one evening, 6 months into their marriage as they sat on the porch of their expanded cabin. He had built on 2 more rooms, a proper bedroom and a small workshop for Willow's medicines. Willow smiled, leaning against his shoulder. People are less afraid of what they understand, and I'm less afraid of being known now that I have you. Preston wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. You'll always have a place with me, he said, the words that had once been a promise now a simple statement of fact. I know, Willow replied, placing her hand over his. And you with me. As the sun set over the Colorado hills, painting the sky in the same brilliant colors that had greeted Willow that first evening at the ranch, she felt a contentment she had never thought possible. The town that had banished her had given her an unexpected gift. It had driven her to Preston. To this life they were building together, she had run from judgment and found acceptance. She had hidden from hatred and discovered love. And in the vast, wild country that had once seemed so threatening, she had finally found her home. A year to the day after their wedding, Willow gave birth to a daughter with Preston's blue eyes and her own dark hair. They named her Hope, a testament to what had brought them together and what would carry them forward into the future they would build, side by side, in the land that had once seemed so wild but now felt like exactly where they were meant to be. Winter gave way to spring, spring to summer, and summer to fall, the seasons turning in their eternal cycle. The ranch prospered under their joint care, the herd growing, the garden Willow had planted yielding abundant harvests. Their daughter took her first steps, spoke her first words, grew from infant to toddler to little girl with a spirit as wild and free as the land around her. Occasionally, travelers would pass through, bringing news from distant places, including, sometimes, Loveland. The town had changed, they said. A proper doctor had settled there, the children who had once been ill were thriving, and the fear that had driven them to banish Willow had been replaced by shame. Some of the very men who had stood with torches outside her cabin now spoke of their actions with regret. "Would you ever want to go back?" Preston asked her one evening after such news had reached them. "Not to stay, but to visit, to show them they were wrong about you." Willow considered the question, looking out over the land that had become her home, at the husband who had become her heart, at the child who represented their future. "No," she said finally. "What happened there led me here to you, to this life. For that I can only be grateful." "The past is behind us now," Preston nodded, understanding as he always did. "Then we'll keep looking forward." And that's what they did, day by day, season by season, year by year, building a life together on the foundation of that simple promise made in a storm: "You'll always have a place with me." In a land where belonging was the most precious commodity of all, they had found it in each other. And that, Willow knew, was the greatest treasure the Wild West had to offer.